don't feel like you have to go for a home run every time. You can.
That's a good line.
Thank you. I'm good with my sports analogies.
And good with lines too. Welcome back.
To the third episode.
Episode 3. This is going to be a more heartfelt, fluffy, more unicorn and rainbow motivation podcast compared to episode 2, which was a bit heavy. And the reason why we've decided to go more light on this episode.
Yes, that's right. We'll have a bit more fun here. We'll have room for serious topics. Do you want to explain what we're talking about?
Before we do, we got our first comment.
Yes.
This is an absolute incredulous thing to happen. It says first comment. You can also go back to episode 1 and see this famous person go like their comment.
Yeah, it's only 1 like now, but by the time you're watching this, it could have 12,000 likes.
It could be one of our parents.
It really could be. We actually don't know.
Under some kind of pen name or something.
We have no idea who this is.
But shout out to Sri Ram K9183.
Yes, and shout out to your views. We've got enough ad money to print out a page, and
we don't have admin stuff yet, so we
No.
had to do manual labor.
Exactly, it's terrible.
All right, we really love you, Sri Ram K, but I don't know if I should be removing it. It's kind of ruining the aesthetic. But as we said, we have acknowledged, and that sounded very brutal. Drew, episode 3, we're going a bit more light on this episode. So what are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to be talking about getting out there. What does that mean? What do we mean by getting out there? Is it good to get out there? Should we be cautious about getting out there? And also, we're talking a bit about mental resiliency and how to push through perhaps some down moments in your life.
So today's episode is exactly what Drew said, and we'll basically also be talking about how we built or still are building mental resilience and being proactive in trying out new things. And I think this podcast is a good example of trying out something new, not knowing how it'll work out, but doing it anyway because we want to do something creative and try something new. And that's how experiences happen. You pivot, something doesn't work out, keep pivoting until you found your sweet spot.
I think that's right. Every one of you can dislike the video, and that's fine. It's still trying something.
Don't do that.
Of course not. Why would you do that? But if you did for whatever reason hate this, that's okay. But for us, I think this is a good example of trying to take a bit more risk and trying to do something that might have terrified us maybe this time last year. Trying to really put ourselves out there and try and find the sweet spot in terms of how you want to express yourself and how you want to live your life and what hobbies you want to have and how you want to live.
And not feel constrained about other people's opinions as to what you do. So that's part of mental resilience, which is staying motivated and keeping yourself grounded when things are quite challenging, or if you have a very challenging day, how do you set yourself up for success the next day?
Yeah.
And being proactive.
Of course, and I think maybe I'll start, Fauzi. We're just maybe saying, when did you...
Did you say Fauzia?
I think it's good for brand retention.
The mispronunciations will be quiet. Hi, but it's okay. We can build cultural competency in another episode to discuss.
Cultural competency?
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. I thought we would get a bit of a start by asking you about when did you realize the importance, or how did your views on getting out there evolve throughout your adult life?
So I grew up in a household, and I'm not sure, I can't speak for other households. If you have daughters, if your dad is just overly protective, but my parents are quite overly protective and conservative, and still conservative to this day about going into the so-called real world and experiencing what the world is outside of our family house. Um, so from a young age, this feels like I'm kind of repeating episode 2. I was very curious about what was going on around me and how I could get involved in things. I just wanted to, as I mentioned, build my identity. And that part of that, or a huge part of that rather, involved immersing myself into experiences. So I think in that context, the way that I built mental resilience and getting out there is by taking that first step. And for me, that was my undergraduate degree and being involved in the peer network program where we met. Going back to your question, I built resilience and getting out there through trying different things. And university was a good escape for me to do that. And building connections was also a good way for me to not only hang out with people to build experiences, but also I never really knew or explored the city. I was always a suburbs girl. I never really knew how to navigate my way around the city. So that was a very pivotal moment for me in my undergrad to explore the city. And then from there, it was just a floodgate of opportunities through undergrad, through postgrad, and to this day. So I think, and maybe you can agree or maybe disagree to this, that the more experiences that you have, the more exposure that you get to the outside world, and the more that you know if things if things will work out or if there's something that you don't like or you don't like. So, did I just say don't like twice?
Yes.
You like or don't like. There you go.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Even in my own personal experience, maybe growing up a bit more conservatively, where perhaps the main focus was getting a good mark in high school, and everything you do is really focused on achieving that. And that's
Boy, you did.
well, let's not make bold claims on this podcast.
You can, since you're editing, you can, put a bit of a bold frame around this clip.
Now you're gonna make me blush in front of the camera, but everything in my life was leading up to getting a good mark, and then everything in my life after that was leading up to getting a good job, and now everything leading up to that is also, progressing in life as well. Get a house, get married, whatever goes after that. So I think really going out there, I think in a sense is partly going out there in terms of that pathway that's set out for you, but it's also really outside of that pathway in things that might not have been necessarily a focus of you early in life. Like I said, my focus early in life was one thing. It took great struggle and still does to some extent to get out there in different areas, even socially, or talking to people, joining clubs, societies, whatever that might be. Even that, that wasn't an easy transition, but I think certainly once I got out of high school and I saw the wider world, went out of that bubble of high school, I think I started realizing, yeah, there is a lot that you don't know, and the
Mm,
best way of knowing is trying. So just try different things,
yeah.
and I realized that you obviously won't like everything, but the experience itself can tell you a bit about yourself as well.
You raised a good point. Where we'll talk about this in another episode about safetyism and parenting and how often that can be safe or um, I want
Restrictive.
restrictive. I was thinking collusive, but I'm like, I don't even know if that's a word. I think like often when we grow up, we're shielded from things to experience. And once you hit a certain age in your adult years, that may be in your early 20s, that may be in your later 20s, each to their own, but you start to understand the different kind of challenges that come within. And you mentioned, from high school to now thinking about marriage and planning that process. But we also want to focus on the challenges that you experience in those stages, um, and some of the mental hurdles that you go through as well. So, if you were to sum up what or define putting yourself out there, what does that mean to you, um, in your own terms? Or perhaps you've read supplementary material that has helped you.
It is, you have a comfort zone, and putting yourself out there means saying that, this thing sits outside of that zone. I'm not comfortable doing it. I think if you take that positive step to actually do that thing, whatever that thing is, I think that is really putting yourself out there. There's degrees, obviously, to that, but I think even small steps is something to celebrate.
So, really lowering your boundaries, or maybe putting boundaries in place, but lowering your guards to experience more things. And we're not saying go out there and do something naughty or rebellious. Do that if you may. That's on you. Disclaimer, we won't be endorsing that. But we're more so around the idea of you don't know what you don't know. And I think speaking to a lot of my friends, there's a lot of hesitation about pivoting to a different career, a different industry, or trying a hobby. For example, someone who I was speaking to the other day said to me that they want to get back into dancing because they let that go as a child, and they got busy naturally, and now they don't know if they want to go back. And I asked them what's stopping them, and most of the time it's our own mental resilience and our own mental state that really can let us down and discount our potential to do things.
That's a good point that you've raised, and I just want to ask you more generally. I mean, why? What do you think is holding people back generally from stepping outside their comfort zone? What have you noticed? What have you heard? What have you felt?
Mm. In my experience, it's definitely the idea that a path that I'm taking should go a certain way. So, perfectionism as an idea. So, thinking as though if I pursue something, it's going to happen in a certain way that seems logical in my head. And um, one example I can say, um, is my pivot to the legal industry. And I was very nervous about pursuing an industry who I had no connections with, when I was initially looking at applying for it in high school. So I ended up applying to business, did get into law, but I was like, "Ooh, I don't think I want to do that." So there's a few kind of things I can draw back from that experience now that I'm doing law. One is don't discount your potential. You can do something, but your body and your mind always has that tendency to be like, what if? And that question really annoys me as well. And often you just have to step outside of your head and say, hey, this is fine. Like the worst case scenario is this. But given that this is what's happening, these are the steps, I know who I am, I don't think it'll reach that. But if it does, then that's at least I've somewhat prepared for it or expected it. And the second, I think, is, apart from kind of words of affirmation and not self discounting yourself, is just doing something. And I go back to my point of like, you don't know what you don't know. And comparison as well. I don't know in your experience if you've compared yourself to others that has kind of discounted your belief to go out of your way or step outside of your comfort zone. But I don't know if that's something you've experienced. And if you have, is there an example of it?
I think certainly, you see people doing things that you consider to be great or things that you might want to do for yourself, and sometimes you can fall into that trap or that pattern where you see that and you say to yourself, you know, person X can has done all this. Don't have the capacity or capability to do this myself, unless they're like an Olympian or something. For the most part, you might not be able to do the exact same thing, but you might be able to get closer than you think
That's right.
by trying
Yeah.
and by looking at the process of how they got there rather
Mm,
than necessarily boxing yourself and narrowing your vision to
Mm,
only looking at the outcome of doing that. So I've certainly have felt it where
mm,
I see people, they might get a job that I'm like, oh wow, that's pretty impressive. I don't know if I
mm.
could do that. I mean, that's
And
probably
how
one that
about
comes
something that's concurrently happening, like you're preparing for a marathon,
half
a
marathon.
half marathon? So, did you feel any self doubt in preparation or enrolling for it initially?
Yeah, I think so. I think you see a lot of people, you can go on like Strava, for example, and you see a lot of people who they run long, they run fast, and you think to yourself, "Oh, I don't have that discipline in me. I don't have that commitment. I don't have that speed. I don't have that passion to do it." And I
Mm,
think that can be on some occasions demotivating, and I think that
of
can
course.
certainly bring some self doubt
Mm.
into you. So I do think that self doubt can be a bit paralyzing in this respect. It can certainly stop you or prevent you from taking that action that you want to take. And I think especially if you don't have a history in something, I think that can be hard to overcome.
Yeah, certainly. Wow, I've used certainly just like you do. But I think technology and social media is a huge thing where because we have tech that's so accessible and social media challenges such as doom scrolling and one of our favorite authors, Jonathan Hyde, talked about is around social comparison and the damage that it does to, I would say, all generations, not just millennials, Gen Zs, and how it's so easy to compare your competency compared to another competency. But what you don't see are the barriers and hurdles that people have gone through to get to where they want. Going back to a job example, the person who got that job that you were like, oh, this is great, congrats to them, but maybe they went through endless nights of preparing and planning and self doubt. Going back to the steps part, I think that's really important because if you think that you may not be good enough for something or maybe not even prepared for something, practice. If you want to, maybe going back to the marathon example, um, if you haven't done a half marathon before, I think that you can take steps to get to that particular outcome or thing that you want to achieve. And I guess in your case, it's been running almost every day, and then you're incrementally increasing your distance. And that translates to, um, being proactive and getting out there. Is that even if you think that something's unattainable, you can always put in the work and put in preparatory steps to help you get to where you want to go.
Do you think that it's always possible to do in the work? Is there more to it than just putting in the work? Like
Mm.
what would you say to all these other barriers that do
Yes.
exist?
There's also the fear of failure or rejection, where often we may not even start preparing ourselves to achieve that certain objective or goal in mind, but it's just the fear of failing um, in pursuit of something. You have it so logically planned out on Notion, on your notes in your brain. You've talked to maybe your parents about it or a friend, and you're like, okay, this is great. But then the self doubt just creeps in, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know if quitting my job, for example, or if enrolling into that marathon, um, or if enrolling into that dance group is something that I should have done. So it's interesting how the mind works. And if we had a lot of funds, we'd bring Jonathan Hyde or some top psychologist to come in and talk about mental barriers. But I think the fear of failure or rejection, what if I try and it doesn't work?
Yeah, of course. And I think just want to be clear that I think when we talk about why people can't do things, I don't want to pretend like I have all the answers and I don't. And I struggle with so many of these things that we're talking about. I think we both do. So it's not
Mm,
it's not like it's not like can sit here and say we don't not have a fear of failure,
Yeah.
and we don't,
Oh,
we
100%.
don't, have all these other things that are going on. Of course, we do.
It still creeps in every day.
Yeah, of
We
course.
don't want to sit here and be like, we have everything figured out. Here's a Bible of things at work. But self doubt creeps in every
Yeah,
day.
so I think we just want to talk from that
Mm.
relatability perspective of, yeah, we've been there, we still are there, we
Mm-hmm.
have all these problems, but like, what can we do to kind of
Mm.
go out there? What are the benefits of it? What do we get out of it? How do we maybe push ourselves through some of these barriers? So
I've been looking at your mic all day. Woo! All right, Drew. I also want to talk a little bit about the other barrier. We talked a little bit about decision fatigue, and I'm going to let you talk a little bit about this. We know Drew's staple fish in the sea, salmon, ice cream example. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that. And separately, why people may feel burnt out in pursuing new things and getting out of their comfort zone.
yeah, so this is a very, very complicated topic, and I'm only going to talk for less than a handful of minutes, so certainly not going to give it full justice here, but perhaps we will, and we shall explore this in future episodes in a bit more detail, each of these separate branches. Decision fatigue, quick refresher: you have too many choices, or you've made too many decisions in a day. If you live a very busy lifestyle, or you have your
Mm.
9 to 5 job, you have kids, whatever it might be, you're
Mm.
always making these constant decisions in your life. You're going to work, you come back, might come back home, you might have some other life chores to do, whatever it might be, cooking your dinner, whatever. You're making all these decisions. By the time you've done all that, suddenly it's 8 o'clock, let's say. You might have, theoretically, you might have the time to do all these things, but I think in practice, what you feel is that fatigue of all the things that you've been doing, all those decisions that you've been making throughout the day, and suddenly you might not have the motivation to
Mm.
necessarily push yourself to try something new.
Are you saying it from the viewpoint that people already feel overwhelmed at their current circumstances? For example, they may not necessarily be at a place where they're not happy with, but they're also hesitant in starting something new because they feel like they've put in a lot of work as well.
Yeah, that's right. Although I think hesitancy, it could be hesitancy, but it also just could be, and I've felt this myself so many times. You have a long day, you come back home, and the last thing you want to do is be brave and be proactive. You're just saying, nope, nothing like that.
I'm clocking out for the
I'm
day.
clocking out. I'm switching off my brain. People do it in different ways, but the last thing you want to do is take, like I said, when you're stepping out of your comfort zone, it is really, like, you're being a bit bold. You're using a lot of mental energy, and I think that if your mental energy is depleted, that becomes so much harder to do. Sometimes taking these steps, it might not be realistically feasible. It might not be something that is easy to do. Um, but at the same time, I think it's important to recognize as well that the fact that you are feeling fatigued, the fact that you do want to do something, it might suggest that there might be ways or avenues where you can try and fit in the thing you want to do around that.
With the busy schedules that, or the volatile and, as we mentioned in episode 1, the hustle and bustle culture that has been
Yeah, try
created.
yeah, try and get a bit of space, whatever it might be. It might not be that night, but maybe you can try and set out some time. Maybe think about your priorities.
When you said thinking about priorities as well, sorry to cut you off, I just got an idea and I'm like, if I don't say it now, I'm going to forget. But I think that people already feel like not only they're putting in a lot of work, but there's just so much to think about in this day and age, particularly in the existing role that you play in society, and to pursue, and I'm going to keep going back to the career route because I feel like it's such a common thing where post COVID as well, people have really used the COVID time to evaluate the next steps they want to take in their career, and post COVID is where they're kind of deliberating on whether they want to pursue that particular path or not. But I think that there are so many more options, so many more ice creams that people choose or can choose, and that's overwhelming. And as you said, you don't sometimes you just want to come back home, not think about your next
Yeah,
moves.
exactly. And how do we go out there and try new things? How do we keep that practice going?
I think the first answer I can say is having a balance to your day, even though society sometimes can tire you. You know, maybe after a whole day of work, you are able to replenish yourself. Just how when a plane parks into the airport after a long 14-hour flight and you have all the crew who quickly crowd around the plane to maintain it. I kind of see my end of day like that. Where I'm like, okay, what nutrients didn't I not get today? And second of all, I think being proactive about your schedule as well. So, not only your schedule, but if you have goals in mind, write them down. Do not keep them floating in your head. That is honestly the worst things you can do because you will forget about them. And I feel like I don't know if this has happened to you, but whenever I have goals in my head, I write them down because when I previously never used to write them down, I never really could hold myself accountable or take steps or write down goals or people I can talk to that would help me get to that goal. So those are the two main important things. Do you have anything to add?
Having a sense of what really matters to you and what you feel good doing, it can be easy to stick at what you're doing currently. But I think you have to think about sometimes what are the things that give me joy and excitement, and how do I perhaps achieve that in my life? How can I get more of that? And if it's something you're not already doing, have a think, is this what's the risk of doing that? Is it worth trying, or am I happy foregoing that opportunity, or
Mm,
foregoing that, that chance to do that
mm,
in favor of what I'm currently doing? And like I said, everyone's got their own different things. Sometimes you would say, yeah, I might find more joy doing this, but it's not worth it. And look, I
I'm
think that's also fine. It's up to, I think what's more important is just having that knowledge of that honesty, that knowledge of just thinking to yourself, I can do this. I'm taking an active decision not to. I think that that really does help in terms of putting yourself out there, because that means when you're doing so deliberately. And
sorry, I need your face ID. You mentioned something, and this is the reason why I'll just get you to sign into your phone. I don't have your face ID, unfortunately, but I
that's a
do
good thing.
have
You
your
don't have my
passcode.
face.
And I sent you a quote yesterday that I really want to read out because it goes into the context of what Drew was just saying, where one day you might look back and regret that you didn't make that decision or take that leap. I think that's really important. Um, just do something that you have thought about doing, and as we said, if you don't know if it's going to work out or not, that's just the world, the natural forces playing. But again, you just don't want to be looking back and thinking, I could have done that, but because my own self doubt got in the way, I couldn't do it. So the quote, this is posted by an account called Grow with Colby. If you're 25 now, no matter what, in 10 years, you'll be 35. You have the choice to be a 35-year-old who built their own business, learned an instrument, went back to school, or a 35-year-old who thought it was too late to start.
One of the most important things in kind of getting over your barriers is just being honest about what you're missing, what you think you're missing, and what you need to get there, and how I can get there, and whether that's something I'm okay with doing and taking the risk. Because most of the times, many times, the risk is not as bad as you think it might be. When you look at it from the outside, sometimes the steps you can take are quite minor. I'm not
That's
even
right.
talking about
Yeah.
career. It could be exercise. What's it? Or maybe I go to
Mm.
the gym once a week.
If you're saying I can't pick up that weight, you can just incrementally build yourself. We have faith in you.
Yes, exactly. We do have we do have very big faith.
So, Drew, I thought it would be really good if we could spend a minute or two about the benefits of doing more and taking initiative and how that essentially helps with getting out there.
One of the things is it gives a lot of confidence to you. I think that the fact that you can go out there and do more things, I think really gives you the ability to carve your own path throughout life, whatever that might be. But it gives you that sense that you are more in control, and no one's fully in control of their lives. But I think to the extent that you can be in control of what you can be in control of, I think that proactiveness can certainly be really a key driver and a key factor. But also, you never know what's out there, in the
Yeah.
sense that there might be something that you haven't experienced before
Mm.
that you realize is actually something you really like or something that you really enjoy. And I think,
That's the thing. It shields you from your emotions with the lack of or the hesitancy to pursue what's out there.
yeah, that's right. It really does broaden that mind, and it allows you to, yes, see what you do like. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I thought we covered that pretty well, in my opinion. So, a few takeaways is to just put yourself out there and stop self doubting, guys. You got this.
Yes.
This is our very preliminary TEDx talk stages. Drew, is there a downside to constantly staying motivated
Oh
or
no.
constantly taking action? Maybe list three things that, one or two things rather, that you've experienced.
Well, I think burnout,
Mm.
and that's why I'm very careful with what I say, because I don't want anything I say to be construed as you have to ruin your life or do something crazy. I think getting that burnout, in the sense of you're always active, you're always out there, I think that's a recipe for feeling exhausted and not having time for yourself to recuperate and recover. So I think that's a big part. I think it also tied into that is this idea of hustle culture and always feeling like you need to do something that is money making or productive. I think that can be a bit of a toxic mindset, in the sense that you should do things because you enjoy them. You shouldn't do things because necessarily that there's this benefit that comes out of it. And this doesn't apply to every single instance, don't get me wrong. But I think it is something worth clarifying, is that I think people will benefit more generally from being able to view things. Sometimes it's just doing things for the sake of doing it, rather than,
Are you slowly seeping out of the frame?
I think this is a better angle of me.
Cute. Very cute. I see
I've just
you.
been monitoring.
Now that you're online, just picking up all the. So I absolutely agree. Do you keep pushing, or is it important to prioritize rest days? Is our point,
Yeah, I
and
think
that's really
that's right,
important.
and it's just important to always keep an eye out from yourself as well, and yeah, make sure that your health is taking priority as well.
And I think nothing comes easy for someone who comes from a first generation background. My moral in life is that nothing ever comes easy. If you want something, work for it. Work hard for it. So if you want a particular position in a play, let's just, spruce it up a bit. You still need to put the effort to work for it. Through rehearsing, and it could be the most simplistic things like, is my diaphragm, is it able to like produce these notes that I'm going to be singing? So I had a conversation with a family member about 2 years ago, and it still sticks in my head because they were at a spot in their life where they were unhappy with their job and they wanted to try something new. I remember they said to me that they don't want to work for this particular role, and I said to them, like, you have to work for it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it will definitely come easy to you, as it may have to other people, but you can't back down and not expect to not do any work and not to get to where you want to. So I think, Drew, did I segue too fast?
No, no, you just said my name. It
I
was just
did. I didn't even realize. This is definitely going on a trailer.
oh
There's too
god.
many trailer pieces. The link between proactiveness before we get into practical tips.
Link
Oh,
between what and what?
proactiveness and mental resilience. It's in your agenda.
I think the main link, and we've already covered this. I don't want to go into too much detail again. Is, I think, rejection, fear of failure, and really finding ways to combat that. I think we've talked about a few strategies. I think
Mm,
the ones that we favored, and this can also link to the takeaways,
yeah,
unless you have something else to add between with that in the link.
yeah. Embedding takeaways with practical tips as well. If something knocks you down, mental resilience isn't about how you deal with it, or how you react to it, particularly emotionally, but what you make of it. And it's about picking yourself back up and fueling your motivation through persistence, which is our very favorite word, resilience, and just continuing to believe in yourself. And the worst thing that you can do is self doubt and compare yourself. If someone's in a particular position that you may envision yourself to see, just remember that everyone has a different path. And going out of your way to do something, to start that little Etsy store that you want to do, it shouldn't stop you. Everyone has their own life story. And I think it's really important to mold your life story into your genuine experience as opposed to seeing what other people are doing. So, do you have anything to add?
I think I just really have two takeaways. First is take small steps. Don't feel like you have to go for a home run every time. You can.
That's a good line.
Thank you. I'm good with my sports analogies.
And good with lines too.
I was thinking something very inappropriate for this podcast, so I will move on. Yes, I think take small steps. Sometimes, starting this podcast, what's the small step? It is just sitting in front of the camera and pressing record, and then seeing what happens. It can be going out for a run if you're doing running, whatever it is for running. It could be talking to someone if you're trying to look for a new job. Just even just getting the ball rolling somehow. It could just be putting that idea out there, holding yourself accountable. I think second is really just building in time for yourself. I think we talk about proactiveness, we talk about mental resiliency, but I think at the end of the day, you have to also look out for yourself. It's not.
That's right.
It's about really being fair with yourself. It's not. You're not a superhuman. You shouldn't expect yourself to do superhuman things. People have a lot to offer, and you have to put yourself in the right mind space and put yourself in the right ability where taking these small steps becomes a lot more easier and becomes something that you're more willing to do. So those are probably my two key takeaways.
And herd mentality as well, stepping away from anxieties that people may talk about or create around you. I've experienced this myself where people have talked about the anxiety of getting into a program, for example, or a process, and people have kind of, it could be simple things like people say, don't do that particular elective at university because that is, the terrible elective. But you need to figure that out for your own. Try and step away from those opinions to mold your own life. So, in saying that, thank you for listening to episode 3. And we hope you found some joy, insight into some of the experiences that we shared, some of the tips that we shared as well, and somewhat of a pep talk to get you going on that bike you want to ride or that Pilates class you want to enroll into, that job you want to apply for. So there we are.
Of course. And if this has helped you or you feel even more demotivated, just let us know and we'll take your feedback on board.
Yes, even if you comment it, we will stick it up here and give...
And we'll tear it down after 30 seconds.
We will see you guys in the next episode. There's a few busy weeks ahead of us, but we will be hoping that the consistency of the schedule remains.
Yeah, we'll be back soon.
Yes.
Back soon.
Yes, I know.
All right.
I love that saying.
All right, we'll see you around and have a great morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it might be.
I don't think we have international viewers yet. And if we do, that's a miracle. Actually.
Well, people can watch this before they go to sleep.
Do we have stats on YouTube?
We do have stats. They're all from Australia.
I see you guys.
I think so. But if I'm wrong, and if you're outraged and YouTube's not counting you correctly,
they'll be like, excuse me, you're not acknowledging the minority. We acknowledge the minority without even knowing if they're... And you're not a minority. You are equal. You are a king and a queen. Anyways, farewell, and we'll see you.